Megyn Kelly calls AOC out, exposes her dirty secret. Folks, AOC, also known as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is quite a character. We'll put it that way. She is a performer in every sense of that word, okay? And one of her big claims to fame is that she's from the Bronx. You know, she was down and dirty, you know, rough, working class, all this stuff. Except it turns out there is a little bit more to the story, as you'll see in just a moment here. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. But first, do me a big favor, folks, like our video and share it around so that way we can keep bringing you all this great hard-hitting content. And as always, Patriots, I'm your host, Darian, and this is Resist the Mainstream.
The Bronx is part of New York, no question. It is one of the 5 boroughs. Westchester is a Tony community just north of New York City, in between New York City and Connecticut. Westchester has got a lot of very well-heeled communities like Bronxville. That's where, well, I guess I shouldn't say, but somebody very famous who runs a very big sports organization lives and has raised his children. All sorts of lovely little pockets there. One half of it is on the water, the Hudson River, and overlooks that. And then on the other side, you kind of walk up and there's more water. Anyway, there's a beautiful little town called Yorktown Heights in Westchester. It's not the fanciest of Westchester towns, but it ain't the Bronx by any measure. And the reason this is relevant is because a congresswoman who you may know as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been telling us for years that she is from the Bronx. And recently she had a fight with President Trump over tweet, text, truth, whatever. And she played tough and said, "Oh, don't you mess with me. I'm a Bronx girl. And we eat Queens boys for breakfast," because that's where Trump was raised, in the Queens. And respectfully, AOC. Well, that's real cute, except she only lived in the Bronx until she was age 5, when at best you're in usually kindergarten, maybe first grade. And she spent the rest of her childhood, 1 through 12th grade, in Yorktown Heights, which is Westchester. And by any measure, it is richer, nicer, and more white collar than the Bronx, with all due respect to my friends in the Bronx. She's pretending to be a Bronx girl because she wants this to be part of her origin story, the same way as she wants now to be called Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Have y'all ever observed this phenomenon where people seem to take pride in being from, you know, the hood, the ghetto, a poor area, a crappy area, whatever you want to call it? It's really quite common, and I can't figure out exactly why. What exactly is good about that? You know, oh, yeah, you know, where I'm from, you know, I lost 10 friends. Yeah, it was great. You know, it's like, what? And you'll even notice they'll actually seem to get upset or hate on people who didn't grow up in such terrible places. Take LaTanya Jackson, for example, that Wisconsin state senator.
Suburbs. Because they don't know a goddamn thing about how life is in the city.
Man, those terrible, dastardly white people in their clean, low-crime neighborhoods, just, it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Can't stand them. Now listen here, you wealthy person. You grew up in a safe area. Well, try growing up in my part of town, all right, where, you know, gangs ravage about, and, you know, I lost like 10 friends getting deleted by them every day. That's a real lifestyle. No. Actually, I'll pass. You know, I'll live in the clean, low-crime area, but thanks anyways.
Meanwhile, everyone knew her as Sandy Cortez when she was growing up, and her lies are coming to the fore. So, among other things, Benny Johnson, who's hilarious, and he's a great Twitter follow and has a great show, went to Yorktown Heights just to take a look and to talk to some folks there about AOC and what Yorktown is like and so on. And now some of her schoolmates, separate and apart from Benny, are weighing in on her claims. I'll get to the Benny thing in one second, but there was a piece in the New York Post talking about how she's embarrassing herself. She's embarrassing herself now with this Bronx girl claim. They went and tracked down Assemblyman Matt Slater, who's a Republican from Yorktown, New York State Assembly, and he said, quote, she's embarrassing herself for doing everything possible to avoid saying she grew up in the suburbs instead of the Bronx. What she said now that people are starting to look at whether she's a Bronx girl, which she's not, is, quote, I'm proud of how I grew up, and I talk about it all the time. My mom cleaned houses and I helped. We cleaned tutors' homes in exchange for SAT prep. She went to Boston University. Again, she's like Mom Dami. She wants to, he's picturing himself eating with his hands like he's fresh off the boat from someplace. And she's talking about how she's been cleaning houses her whole life. Meanwhile, she grew up in Yorktown. Then she says, growing up between the Bronx and Yorktown deeply shaped my views of inequality. And it's a big reason I believe the things I do today. Now back to Matt Slater.
That's a really cute story. And I almost wonder if that was fed to AOC by the Justice Democrats. If you don't know who they are a far left, very progressive group that essentially established an aim to put in far left candidates and replace all the kind of centrist, moderate, establishment Democrats, and centrist and moderate, frankly, should be in quotes too, because no Democrats are moderate. All right. They're all far left wackos as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, they have funded candidates like AOC, the entire squad: Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. Who else? Ro Khanna. He's that far left Indian guy who pretends he's reasonable. He's in the Bay Area. Yeah, lots of crazy far left wackos.
Now back to Matt Slater, who says, first she said she has visited extended family. Then she said she had commuted between the Bronx and Yorktown. I was just visiting Yorktown Heights. Oh, I was just commuting. And now she's said she grew up in between the two, like back and forth, back and forth. No, she lived in the Bronx when she was 5, then they moved to Yorktown Heights. He says it's clearly desperate attempts to protect the lie that she is from the Bronx. And here is a bit from what Benny Johnson found.
We finally got to Yorktown Heights. Check out this beautiful entry to the city. Trees lining the road.
The violins.
Some beautifully manicured lawns, American flags. This looks like an awesome place to be from. You get out of the car and you find something like this. Welcome to the capitalist horrors of AOC's Yorktown Heights Patriot State Park. You can see here a Veterans Memorial Circle that's been beautifully tended and groomed with a lot of American flags and a lot of honor for our great nation. Really, just a terrifying place to grow up here. Capitalist swine trying to sell me rhubarb at this beautiful Meadows Farm farmer's market that, you can smell it. They just want my money, my capitalist dollars. I'm not gonna let them do it because I'm an angry Marxist. No trash, no graffiti, yellow school buses, disgusting, okay? So safe, so clean. AOC grew up here, now you can understand, okay? You can understand where the radicalization comes from.
This whole routine is cute and all, but let's be real. At the end of the day, AOC is never going to be held to account for this, okay? This discussion has actually popped up years back. I remember AOC lied about being from the Bronx back then, just like she does now. People called her out, and guess what? Everybody forgot. It'll probably be the same thing now. And I'm not saying that to be a pessimist or anything like that, okay? It's just reality. Let's take the example of Joe Biden. And I know this is a longer time frame, but bear with me. Biden, when he ran for president, I believe in the 80s, the dude is older than the dinosaurs. Biden actually infamously dropped out in disgrace. Why? Because he copied a speech, plagiarized it from a man who was, I believe, running for a UK Labour Party position, talking about how his dad was a coal miner. Yep. Biden ripped it all off. Quite embarrassing. But then guess what happened? He came and then was elected president years later. Point being, people have a very short memory in politics.
It's too nice. This is hell. We must destroy America and capitalism. We've been here for 2 hours. We've been walking around. It's beautiful. It's patriotic. There's American flags on every street. How could you become such a dirty communist growing up here?
If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, maybe it's a duck.
How's it possible?
I don't know. I don't think it is. I think it's fake.
So do we all. York. I've spent a lot of time in Yorktown Heights, actually. My college boyfriend was from there. There are lower end parts of it, but the town net is absolutely beautiful and a lovely place to grow up. She's a liar. She's another cosplayer. Anyone can do this, what she's doing. You look at your circumstances and talk about them in the most dire terms possible to make yourself sound tougher than you are, to make it sound like you overcame more than you did. And in her case, to make it sound like you have street cred when you try to fight the oligarchy. I mean,
Exactly. They think it makes them cooler. It doesn't.
honestly, I could sit here and say, I was raised by a single mom who was a nurse, who put me through college with their own blood, sweat, and tears. It's true. It's true. All of that is true, except there's some context. For the first 15 years of my life, I had an intact family. My dad was alive and well and was a college professor, first at Syracuse and then at the State University of New York at Albany. And we were a double income family. And my mom was within 9 credits of getting her PhD and was eventually a nursing manager. And then my dad died suddenly. And my mom did have to put me through college with my dad's insurance money. So yeah, we had some knocks. But you see what I'm saying? Like, leaving out the other part would lead you to think I had a much tougher childhood than I really did. And what she wants to do is she wants to inflate the Bronx, the 5 years of Bronx living when she was a toddler, into her actual origin story.
You guys ever hear about Gary Vaynerchuk? He does a lot of this kind of advice online about how, you can succeed and do well in business, that kind of stuff. And let me say, an actual good message. He does give it going. But one of his big things is he says, I was just working, in a wine cellar, stacking boxes when I was younger. It sucked. I was 30 years old, but then I made it big. So you can too. And then you look into it a little deeper and you find out that actually his dad owned the wine business and warehouse that he was working at. Conveniently not discussed when he's talking about that. Kind of reminds me of that, saw a bit of a parallel.
Another example, I could tell you, Walter, I had to wait tables to put myself through school. I worked day and night, which is true, to make sure I could pay the bills so that I could go to law school and make something of myself. There'd never been a doctor or a lawyer in any of my family. My Nana answered phones for the phone company. My pop-up worked at a paper mill. These were not rich people. Okay, all of that would be true. But the truth is, I was waiting tables in between my summers at Syracuse University, which cost $15,000 a year back then. It's probably a lot more now. I know it's a lot more now. Here's how AOC, who went to Boston University, which I think is more expensive than Syracuse, talks about her
very
stint.
much more.
Yes, talks about her stint during that same period of her life. Well, listen to this. It's SOT 10.
Because when the system is stacked against you, it's hard to feel like anything you do matters. It's hard to feel like we matter in this democracy.
So deep.
And it is easy to give in to the despair. And I can tell you, I know that when I was waitressing and struggling to put food on the table, for a while there, I did. I tried to stop caring. I tried to just keep my head down, work my shifts, and accept that this is just how things are. But that is no way to live, Arizona. It's no way to live.
Okay.
What I do know is that we don't have to live like this. And in fact, we cannot live like this anymore.
AOC, you tell him, girlfriend. Folks, that crazy Latina AOC, she is a lot. What do you all think? I want to hear your thoughts, all right? Comment below. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And that way, we will be sure to see you again soon. God bless you all, and thanks for tuning in.